Hello and welcome back to Cody's Radio Workshop. On the bench today I've got another Roberts, and this is an R900. So another Roberts R900. This one's particularly fetching in red. Very nice. About 1985. This one. I believe this was an early one anyway, according to the seller's description. Bought it on eBay and then had to do some jiggery-pokery and get the guy to actually post it to me because it was collection only from halfway across the country. But sold to me as working, but we'll see, because one person's description often differs to another's perception of that description, so we'll find out very shortly. But one thing that I've already noticed, and if I zoom you down you should see, zoom too far and then just move it up a little, you can see there's a screw just there, just underneath the dial face. So it's very possible that somebody's been in here before, or that's been rolling about in there ever since it was born. So that's the first thing that I've noticed. It's in generally good condition, with a little bit of paint rub here and there, or a bit of colour rub as it were, on the leather cloth, but that should polish up quite nicely with some, I've got some red shoe dye that I can put on there and then buff it up, and that'll look amazing again. But it's a bit grubby, you know, the ends are a bit grubby. You can really hear that screw knocking about now. You can see it's probably been stored somewhere damp as well, because that's a little bit of mould. So anyway, without any further ado, we need to find out if it works, don't we? So let's open it up and connect up the bench power supply. So on the bottom of these, if I just turn that over, there's a screw there, and it's kind of a quarter turn and it'll come out. I've just noticed that feels exceptionally loose, so there's another thing straight away. The screw comes all the way out and it shouldn't, but that's something else we can attend to. So serial number on this one, for those of you playing along at home, is 3829. So it is quite an early one. I'm just going to take that screw out of that bottom plate and put it into my magnet there, so I don't lose it. Put the bottom on one side. So looking inside, what have we got? We've got where used to be a battery snap, and that's just been taped together. It's going well so far, isn't it? Let's get that tape off and have a look at how that's been. It's very dry, so it's very historic. There's no stick left on the sticky. Well, they did manage to actually isolate both of the terminals, so there's a little bit of red wire on there as well on the end of the yellow wire, so they've extended that at some point as well. Let's get this one. Will that just pull off? It will. And there's no extension on the black one, so it needs a battery snap on there as well. There's the old tape that goes in the recycling. So yeah, that's not a brilliant start, is it? And I've just noticed something else. It's going really well, this. I zoom you down and just turn. You see the purple wire? Let me get a pointer. The purple wire there, which is attached to the aerial. If I turn it there, you can see the clip there that's clipped onto the aerial, and the purple wire, it's just hovering about in free space. It's not actually attached to anything. So that won't help its cause either. Do you know, it's going so well, this. So the next thing that I need to do is to take out the aerial. I don't even know if the aerial's working, you know, if it's complete and if it's straight and unbroken, and I guess we'll find out as we take it apart. But with that screw being loose just there on the underneath of the dial face, I'm guessing that somebody's been in here before. what for, I've yet to find out. I'll take both of what I call the shoulder screws out. These are the two screws, one either side, that holds the actual radio into the case. Withdraw those. And then disconnect the lead there for the DIN socket, which is on the back. That's the lead for that. And a pair of pliers to loosen off that nut there. It's this nut here to loosen off, just to take off the battery wires which are attached to the frame. That is normal. There's a nut and a washer to come off, and that's then just held on by a cleat which you just lift off. Disconnect the speaker, and then with a suitable poking implement, which to me is usually a screwdriver, to reach down inside and give it a push, and that should drop the radio out of the case. Well, not literally drop, you really don't want to do that. And then there's just one more wire, you see there with the green, to disconnect, and then the rest of it should just come out like that. So there's the case. As I've said, it's in pretty rough shape really, but it will clean up. Is there a date on the inside of this? There usually is. I'm guessing this is around about 1985. This one doesn't have the date stamped on it like most of them do. Maybe the early ones didn't. I've seen it on some and not on others, and vice versa. But looking here at the circuit board immediately, I spot that it's not had the official Roberts modification done. You've seen me do that before on previous videos to do with the R900 model, where you remove this cap and you remove this cap, and the one that was here you put there, and you don't put anything in that place, and you can replace it with a 2.2 if there's any increased noise. And also on the other side of the board, it's a D05, so it's an early one, so it does need these tracks cut in, and the on-off switch and the long wave switch terminals shorting together. So there's two cuts to be made on the circuit board. Yeah, so we'll get to do that. But what I am most interested in, just for right now, is to get this dial face off. Now these knobs should just pull off, and they do. One particularly stubborn one. Push the aerial out of the way. You can see on here there where it's marked FM Ant, which is where that purple wire should be attached to, but it's actually, like I said, it's doing its own thing. Just want to get this dial plate off, so I need to also unscrew the headphone socket. These are sometimes just finger tight, but not this one. So, with a suitable tool like a pair of pliers, let's get it just moving, and then it's finger tight. You can just unscrew that. There should be a washer there as well, and then you can lift off the dial face. There is quite often, if you've got one with the bigger headphone jack on there, there's quite often a really thick washer there as well, but on this one with the smaller jack there isn't. There's the screw, and it's come out of the wave change switch. So whether somebody's taken that out or whether it's rattled loose over the years, I have no idea, but just for the moment I think we'll pop that back in. It's not something that I've seen before, and that's what I like. It shouldn't have to come out again. It may have to come out again if there's a problem with the on and off switch. Again, that's something that I've covered in a previous video, again to do with the R900. Yeah, that was And the other one's quite loose too. So we're pretty close now to powering up the radio. I need to get my power supply leads, so we're on.
Get lost, aren't they? They're the ones.
Well, it's working.
My whole world would change. Let the strobe light on the moon.
Well, the on and off switch seems to be working fine. Medium wave. That's just dropped off a cliff.
Vegetation that could really drive your previous victims.
And long in wave. I think that long wave has got something to do with that pin there. That it's not, although it could be just the actual switch bank itself, and we just mash the buttons 100 times. Well, not quite 100 times, but yeah, we'll get some switch cleaner in there as well. So the radio is working, but it's just not working its best. So now is where the servicing comes in, and I've got a dome going on the top of that capacitor there. Bass and treble, do they work? I usually test those. Let's tune a station. Try and find a talking one.
£50. But now the council wants to put many people off. People perhaps like
And
James
connect
who's come over
the
to
aerial
celebrate
back up.
his friend's birthday.
Like everything goes over here. Everything's so polite.
So
Everyone's
bass
happy
works.
with everything. So obviously one thing leads to another. Things do get carried
But
away.
treble doesn't. So yeah, it's going swimmingly so far, isn't it? Right. So bass and treble is these two capacitors here. One of those already feels like a dry joint. And it's wobbling. So I've got a lot of reflowing to do as well. And we're back. So the next thing that I would like to do with this is attack this modification and get the modification done. This means taking out this capacitor here, and this is C53 if anybody's playing along on the schematic, and take out C59. The one that came out of C53 goes in the C59 position, so that's what I'm going to be doing next. Shortly after that I'll be cutting the tracks here and here, as it says on the modification sheet, and I'll be linking some of these switch positions together on the on and off switch and on the long wave switch too. So without much further ado, oh, I've just noticed as well, I don't know if the camera will pick that up. There's just a G there, and that's they're usually signed by the person who was responsible for either the assembly or the final inspection. I've not seen the G before, but I will be logging that one onto my sheet. I have a sheet with all the different signatures. Sometimes you even got their names actually written on there. It might say Mary or Elaine or something like that. Anyway, that's by the by. First thing we need to do is change these two capacitors. Well, not change them. There we go again, getting ahead of myself. Remove both these capacitors. This one that comes out of here, you can just whiz it, get rid of it, put it into your spares if it's still any good. The one that comes out of here has to go in the C59 position there. So this one first. This is usually quite a pig to remove because it's on the ground plane. So sometimes it's best to add a little bit of solder first. Like that. And then remove it straight away. Like that. Let's see if that's got that one. It does. And this one is 1000 microfarads, and just testing this, I grab the peaky down, get that into shot somewhere. So this should read 1000. Let's get that connected up there, look. And then switch it on. Mm, 1353. I'm going to change that. But that has to come out and go in that position there anyway, so I'm going to change that. I'll put a brand new 1000 into the C59 position. Bit of a blockage going on there in my engineer solder sucker. There, that's cleared it. Just didn't clear that as nicely as it normally does. So I'll take out C59 and discard it. Just out of interest though, I'll test this one too, because this has got some spooge underneath it. It might just be glue. So this one should be 470 microfarads. It's 533, so me, I would change it probably because it's on its way, but I need to get myself 1000 microfarad capacitor. And pop it into the C59 position thus. Get that one soldered in. Cut off the legs and pop them into my parts tray. They might come in useful at some point. So there's the 1000. It's not sat down as nicely as I would like, so I'll just warm that solder joint up again. That's better. There, that's that nice and squarely. So you don't need to put anything back here, back in the C53 position, unless you get some increased noise when you're using it. Increased noise means any kind of slight interference whilst you're tuning. Then you can put a 2.2 microfarad cap in there. So the next thing is the bottom clenching part, where you have to cut a couple of tracks, and I will zoom down just in case anybody's missed the previous video where I actually showed this process. So I'll use a pencil. I'll just mark where you need to cut. So it's kind of across there and across there. So you're completely isolating this pin here, which is the one where the reason for doing the modification was the way that the board was laid out, and with the capacitors the way that they were, when you first historically switched the set on, there would be a large inrush of current, and that current would go straight across the teeny tiny copper contacts inside the switch, and over time that would burn out those copper contacts, and then the on and off switch just wouldn't work anymore. And I do see quite a lot of that. So doing this modification on this serial number board here prevents the inrush of current, because you are linking here and here, here and here, and across the long wave switch as well, which reduces the amount of current actually going into the switch in the first place. So because you're isolating this one essentially here from the circuit, the switch will work on the opposite contact, which won't have any arcing at all on it, but will still operate the set, if that makes any sense. So what I like to do, you can cut it, you know, you can get a scalpel and you can cut through and cut through and cut through until you've got no continuity anymore. Or you can do what I do and get the Dremel out and drill through the track so that there's no continuity. And again, I'll be using the fluke meter just to make sure that there is no continuity at all once I've cut through it. Zoom you back out and then you can see me with the Dremel. There's the cordless Dremel. It's a Dremel 8200 for anybody wanting to know. And I'm going to cut through that track there. We can go a bit faster, can't we? The other side now. Just check this. And with the switch in the other position, again, there should be no continuity now between there and there, and there isn't, or there and there, or there, there, or there. Yep, all gone. So now, I'll just give that a brush off, you'll be able to see where I've cut through. And I do need to order some solder mask so that I can colour these sorts of things back in so they don't look as bad, but being absolutely realistic with something like this, nobody else is ever going to see that. It's just a pride thing, that. Right, so that's that cut, that and that are changed. Now I need to bridge across these contacts here between 1, 2, 3, 3 and 6 and 2 and 4, I think it is. I'm gonna drag it back up. I have done this so many times, but it's still always prudent to check. I'm just pulling up the schematic for the R900. There it is. Just talk amongst yourselves for a moment while bridge across the rear two sections of the on and off switch, pins 2 to 5, so that's the middle 2, and 3 to 6, which is the bottom 2, and bridge across the front section of the long wave switch, pins 1 to 4, so that's the top 2 on the long wave switch. Now you'll remember, hopefully, a moment or two ago I cut off the capacitor legs for the 1000 microfarad capacitor. Well, these come in really handy for bridging across these contacts. So you see, it is good to save some of this stuff. I will bet I burn my finger. Pound to a penny, I burn my finger doing this. There's one successfully on. I'll get the other one like that. And then get the snips. You can see I've got quite a bit of extra capacitor left there. So I cut off that excess. If I can grab it. Try that again. So we cut off that excess and use what's left to bridge the next pair. Get a bit of extra solder on that. So, bend that one up. Hopefully you can see where I'm bridging. I will just clarify in a moment. So I've bridged across pins 2 to 5, which are the middle two, and pins 3 to 6, which are the bottom two. I've now got to bridge across the long wave switch pin 1 to 4, which are the top two, so I've still got some capacitor leg left. And now just looking at the long wave switch, which is there, just need to get that to lay down a little better. Get some extra solder on here. There's one. And the next one. And again, lift that leg up there and cut off the excess. Now, what is always prudent at this point, aside from giving it a good old brush off to get rid of the dust on there.
Oh, well, have you thought more about Oliver's offer? I know you said that you wanted to...
A little bit scratchy on that pot there.
Well, me and Em, we were talking about it last night. And look, if he just...
Put some switch cleaner into there. Just work the power switch a little. That's better. And the tone switch is actually working. They just need a little switch cleaner in them too. I'll do that. And the volume switch. And then work them many and several times.
All the girls say I'm pretty for a white guy. Well, I'll be, whatever you, when you never.
That does sound really rather good now. Now obviously that's not everything done, I've still got the alignment to do, which is the fine tuning to make it just sound the best that it can and to tune the best that it possibly can, and to clean the case up. But essentially I think for now, as Mr. All the Gear No Idea would say, that'll do. Thanks very much for watching, like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.